Okay, we're here. Gray water system. I know I haven't done a live stream in a while, and I thought it would be fun to live stream the podcast again today now that I'm back on my feet after the spring workshop. And we got a big old project going on here at the Holler Homestead that we'll talk about on today's show. I think wastewater is something a lot of homesteaders just don't think about. And so we'll be talking about that today. I'm just going to get rolling, guys. Except for that's not rolling. That's like hitting play. One must hit record for record to work. Okay, ready? Well, welcome everyone to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms rather than letting it be lived for you. And I know all of us have been at times in our lives when we do feel like we're having our lives lived for us. And when that little thing happens, it's a good idea to figure out why and what you need to fix. Today is June 17th, 2020, and this is episode 317. Yes, 317. Episode 317, June 17th. We're going to get out of that cycle by the Friday episode, but I just thought it was kind of cool that they accidentally lined up. Today, I want to go over the woes of our gray water system here at the Holler Homestead and what we are doing to address them. I know a lot of you have seen the joke thing on my fridge that says days since plumbing problems. It's not always the water coming to the house. Sometimes it's the water going away from the house. And let me just tell you, you want your drains to flow downhill? That's a preview to what we're going to talk about later today. Also, it's Holler Hat Wednesday. Where is she and what is she doing? You can find that over on Instagram. That's at Nicole Sauce on Instagram. I'm stopping the recording to say I actually posted it before doing the live stream, so y'all can like jump in too. We got a fun picture up today. Okay, back to my thingy. Also, tomorrow is Thursday, so there'll be a MeWe live chat in the morning. Just go over to MeWe.com, join the Living Free in Tennessee group, and you can participate too. If you join it Thursday morning, somebody has to approve you. Guess who's going to be not here? I'm not going to be here. I will be putting a backpack on and going for a hike with Mama Sauce. So not sure if any of my people are going to be on to approve people, but if they are, then it will, I just got totally off my game hat and I'm going to go back and re-record that. That's because I was talking loud in this direction. So sorry about that. Thanks for the feedback. Boop, boop, boop. Where was I? On the road again. On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. Okay. They will get you in, and if they are not, then you might have to wait till the next day when I'm back in the saddle. So if you want to be in the live chat, I highly recommend getting your request in today, Wednesday, June 17th. But don't let that stop you do the request, because once we get you approved, then you're there for live chat all the time, and they talk all the time. Well, not all the time, but many, 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 many times. So with that, it's time for our first segment. What's up in the garden? It was so dry at the workshop, which I was so thankful for because I was afraid we were going to have mud pits. And then if it rains and then it gets hot here, it gets really humid here. So we had great weather for the workshop, but it has stayed dry since then. And I actually had to water my plants, which I never have to do. And part of that is that my soil is out of balance. And that means that it hasn't developed that sort of microbial environment where it's reaching down to the water table and bringing up what the plants need, kind of like a giant earth wicking bed. On the side of my hill above the house, the soil is very poor quality. And this year we're putting more of a concerted effort into bringing it up, but I haven't added a lot of poop or anything. I did a round of daikon radish last year and let them rot away. And this year I'm growing vegetables up there and mulching, like I'm dropping the weeds to mulch around them. Those of you who were at the workshop saw that the weeds are really tall. Yesterday I got them all, most of the tall ones knocked down. And then I just leave them on the dirt to help keep the moisture in the dirt. And that, if I do that for a couple years while adding rabbit pellets and whatever else I can get my hands on, it'll start being a pretty good garden there. But right now, when the soil dries out, the plants dry out. So I actually ran a sprinkler for the first time in years here. Meanwhile, my upper garden, where I have beans and beets and garlic planted, didn't have to water that. So that is how important it is to pay attention to your soil, right? So I'm fine with augmenting the water through the next couple years as I get that hillside more under control, because as the soil gets better, I have fewer of the kind of plants growing there that I don't want to grow there and more of the ones I do. And that makes my whole life easier. Also, the tomatoes are soon to ripen. They're all up there. They're looking good. They just need to start turning. I won't be surprised if they turn soon. I'll be gone for 2 days. Maybe I'll start seeing some change in color on the cherry tomatoes. Those always come on first. I've also got some blight started on one of my plants. So the whole point of the hydroponic system is to avoid the blight. And my suspicion is it's the 100-year-old heirloom tomato variety, 140, actually maybe 150 now. I keep these seeds year over year. They've already had the blight. I'm wondering if blight can transmit from seed into plant. Don't know. But what I'm doing with that is trimming all the bad stuff off. I'm going to take a sucker from the top and root it totally off site. And then once it's ready, replace the tomato with it. And what happens with the late season blight is it creeps from the bottom up. And so then that makes room for the new plant. And we'll see if like in soil, when I do that, the plant just dies, or if we get a similar life cycle where I get, a few months of growth and some tomato production. The good news is my other tomatoes in the system don't have the same problem. They may soon, I don't know, but I also specifically grew blight resistant varieties so that if it did sort of come in through that one heirloom channel that I was suspicious about to begin with, that maybe, just maybe, we'll have tomatoes going into the fall. Strawberries are coming on a few a day out of the hydroponic system. My beets are forming beets, and I have traditionally not been good at growing beets. And even this year, I put out a lot more seeds than I got plants, but both beet patches are starting to swell under the soil, which means soon I get to make pickled beets from my own beets. The peppers look a little sad. The ones in the hydro system look great. Aquaponics, not as much. I gave them a foliar spray yesterday for some more nitrogen to be absorbed through the leaves. And we'll see how that does. I do need to think about what's going on in the aquaponics system right now. Is that the cilantro has bolted, and I'm waiting to harvest the seeds to have coriander and seeds for next year, but they're tall. And tall plants next to peppers means the peppers aren't getting all the sun. And peppers like sun. They like a little bit of shade, but they need that light to grow. So I think that is stunting some of the peppers in the aquaponics system. So the minute I can get that cleared out, I think it will really help. And that's kind of how you do succession planting, right? The stuff gets tall, shades the young stuff that needs a little extra care, and then you cut it out, and all of a sudden the sun hits the plant that's had time to develop a good root system, and you end up with that next layer. And then you have to think, what am I planting at the bottom? So the next cycle will be the fall garden, which are cabbages and greens and those sorts of things. I will start those seedlings in July, and then hopefully be able to transplant them in late August. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes. Best laid plans, right? I planted bush beans this year for my green beans, and they look really good. They're getting a little bit of pest pressure, but not too bad. And the flowers are on, which means I'll start seeing tiny little green beans, like less than an inch, maybe half an inch long. And then within a week, you start having a rolling supply. If I'm smart, I will put another round of green bean seeds in the soil. And I think I'm going to do that before I go hiking tomorrow, just to get another wave, because, sort of the life of the plant ends, and then you want another wave of green beans. And you can kind of keep that rolling if you're planting every 2 to 3 weeks on the green beans well into the fall in Tennessee. I did put squash in, and it looks sad. All of my squash, except for one plant, is on that hillside I talked to you about. And the soil up there is just, it ain't that good. I'm kind of used to just putting plants in the ground and not having to fertilize them. And so I haven't done a lot of foliar spray up there or anything. I didn't put anything in to amend the soil where I put them in. Like my beet patch, I had rabbit poop I didn't have that when I put the squash in. So I may see if I can get my hands on some rabbit dung from my next door neighbor and kind of dig that in around the plants. And then, as I said, I did a foliar spray because they look sad, but they are putting on blossoms. So we'll see. The reason I didn't put them in my upper garden is that the goat fence has not been finished. I can't keep the poultry out, and there's no point in me putting any effort up there if the chickens are just going to come in and pull the seeds out. And so I have put out a notice on Facebook. I'm looking for somebody to help me stretch that fence and get that finished so that we have the garden space fenced off so that at least the fall garden can produce more food. Because I went into this saying we need to have like all the garden spaces used so that we produce more food from the land, right? Because of the shortages that we all know are coming. And then we failed because of that fence. So if we get over the fence, I can at least have fall garden in, and I'll probably do my garlic up there again when it's time to plant that. Anyway, that's the update from the garden. We are eating a lot of vegetables off it, and my Swiss chard is doing the best it's ever been. Right? I've kind of had a love-hate relationship with Swiss chard, as in I love eating it, but I hate growing it successfully. I'll put a lot of care into plants, and then they only get like 2-3 inches tall. And this year I decided when they got 2 or 3 inches tall, I wouldn't start pulling leaves off the outside and just let them get a little taller. And that's worked pretty well. As I said, that foliar spray was a little bit more nitrogen for them. And my aquaponics system's a little out of balance on the nitrogen side. I can see it. I believe we're adding some fish this next week or two because some friends are tearing down their aquaponics system. And if that doesn't come through, I'm buying goldfish to get more fish poop so that we can have more plants. With that, it is time for the main topic of today's show, gray water system overhaul in the holler. Every single workshop I've had right after the workshop, my gray water system, which is what drains from my kitchen sink and my laundry and my bathroom sinks, that system has completely plugged up. And it's not the fault of my kitchen staff. Like, they don't pour grease down it. I had one block up that was somebody pouring bacon grease down the drains. Don't ever do that. But it backs up. And last year, after the workshop, I ended up pulling out some of the floor under the kitchen cabinets. And I found out not only was it backing up, but the pipe had burst and it was leaking under my house. It was really, really, really gross. It was one of the most disgusting plumbing jobs that has ever been. It has since been trumped by a black water issue. But, ooh, it's, let's just say a gray water backup ain't fun. And if you have a system where your gray water dumps into your black water, that kind of a backup is even worse. I'm lucky in that my house has two systems. The black water goes one place along with the bathtub water, which is gray water, and the laundry and the sinks and the dishwasher go to another place. So when the gray water backs up, at least it's not poop. That's just, basically, at least it's not poop. So mid-workshop, it stopped going. And the whole time we've been getting ready for this workshop, the original plan in April was do the workshop and then move my kitchen stuff into boxes or down to the base camp kitchen where Tactical Redneck is living right now. And we all cook down there. And I rip out the cabinets under my sink and we start dealing with the drain problem. So part of why my gray water system backs up is that the drains coming from one side of my house go almost flat and then they go up a little bit and then they pour into the drain water system. And in that spot where it's flat, the water doesn't move very fast. And in that spot where the thing goes uphill a little bit, it does not go, like, it leaves sediment there. And then eventually the pipe gets blocked up. And then we kind of snake it and it pushes a plug of something down into the gray water system. Well, if you have some sediment in your water as it's draining, it will flow downhill and kind of stay suspended in the liquid. If you have chunks flowing down the hill, that is just something that can cause problems because they'll get lodged to different places in your pipe. And the history of my system is that on my property, there is a guest cabin. I believe that was the original structure that was built. And then Mr. Cruz, who built my house, lived in that while he built up here. And so the septic system's down there, the gray water system's down there. It's down the hill from my house. And when he added this house and moved out of that one and gutted that one, which is what he did, he routed the pipes from the house to the cabin, through the cabin to the existing gray water and black water, the septic system. What could possibly go wrong with that? So I think something that I've learned is knowing the history of how your property was built when you move in is really, really important. And the history here is that there was a structure before, and when they put the second structure in, they just connected to it, right? Rather than putting in a separate system for this house. Because I know that, it helps me troubleshoot problems. And the problem is that 90-degree turn at the bottom of the hill. So here's what happens. Things get plugged up, chunks come off the pipe, and then they flow downhill and they get lodged in that corner, and there is no clean out in the cabin for me to get to that corner. And so that means I have to try to snake from above the cabin or below it, and there are enough turns and twists between where it goes in and where it comes out, I can't get to it. So what we do every year is when the septic people come and pick up the porta potty from the event, we have them hook up that giant sucking thing from their truck, hook it up to the clean out that's above the cabin and suck. And a lot of times chunks come out, and I'm able to eke my gray water system through until the next year. This is not ideal. You know what else is not ideal? Gutting the cabin. The core problem is that my gray water travels through the cabin 90 degrees out, and it's a problem. If it's just the gray water coming from the cabin to the gray water system, it's a straight line, right? So it's not a problem to have the gray water from the cabin going out there. It's a problem to have it from the house going through the cabin. So I've been here 14 years dealing with this problem. 14 long, expensive, disgusting, time-consuming years. There's a reason that there is a picture on my fridge that says X days until or since the last plumbing issue. And I see that Hat said there's an error. Does that mean that YouTube errored out, or was it just on her side? I know I won't see your responses right away, but if you guys tell me it's not working on live stream, that'll be good to know. I'm going to go back to the podcast now. So last February, I was on a long drive. I drove to Atlanta. I was on the Zello channel, and we started talking about the issue. And there was a lot of brainstorming about, how the system was and what I could do about it. And one of the problems with the houses here is that there are no crawl spaces under them. So you have to cut through the floor. There's not even enough clearance if you get under there to do anything under it. It's why my plumbing is now in my attic, right? And I was just like, I don't want to dig up, like take out the wood floor in the cabin and all this other stuff. And Idaho Prepper was on, and he said, wait, tell me how it's configured. And I described it. And I said, my house is uphill. Black water and gray water go down to the cabin. They turn a corner under there somewhere. I don't even know exactly where. I just know that it turns at least one corner and probably 2 or 3 corners before it goes out into the gray water system. And he said, well, is there any reason you couldn't just dig, like halfway between your house and the cabin and divert it so it doesn't go through the cabin anymore? And it's one of those really simple, elegant solutions. Because I would say, if you know what in permaculture, what a type 1 error is, that's when you build something that's really expensive to change once you've done it. And then it turns out to be a really bad idea. It was a really bad idea to run the gray water through the cabin on this property. But face palm, right? Do you know how expensive it is to do this change that he just talked about? It is like the cost of a shovel and some time to dig down to the pipe and then the trench. And I was like, okay, but where do I divert the water? And we started talking about it, and different technologies of how to deal with gray water came up. The way mine is set up right now is it works just like a septic system. There's a like a tank thing that the water goes into, and then it links to drain fields and just eventually dissipates, just like your gray water or your black water does. So it's in essence a mini septic system. The benefit of having that not go into your actual septic system is grease and soap are not going into your septic system. Now, a septic system without any water going into it can also have problems because it doesn't have enough, which I think is why the shower water goes in there, because that soap is pretty. It's not like in the laundry, you have a high concentration of soap. From the kitchen, you have a high concentration of soap. From a shower, the ratio to water on cleaning your body is a lot lower. So it totally makes sense that they did that, right? Well, that's one type of technology. Another type of technology is a thing called a mulch pit. Basically, you divert your gray water, you dig a pit, you put wood chips in there, and it just kind of goes, it seeps, from the pit into the groundwater. And the mulch is there to help a decomposition process that brings worms in. And the benefit here is you're basically creating mulch out of your gray water. Another system is more of like I don't know if you'd call it, I don't know what you'd call it. Anyway, it's a pond, but it's not really a pond. There's a word for it. I just can't. The cesspool is what I've heard it called. But it pours into a pond area. You have gravel and you plant plants in there, water plants that will help um, sort of process the soap and bacteria and that sort of stuff that comes out of gray water before it again seeps into the environment. And then what most people do in Tennessee is they just spill it out on the ground. Okay, that causes an environmental concern, right? Right? It depends on your density, guys, and where you're spilling it on the ground. If you're spilling it in a way that it can absorb into the ground, and maybe you plant water-loving plants along where that is, like a willow tree or something, it actually can be done in a way that is great. And I'm live streaming this on YouTube, and Hat just said retention basin for the cesspool that I said. So a retention basin. Thank you for the official word. Um, so spilling it on the ground is not ideal, especially if there's a chance it's going to flow straight into a creek or stream, right? Which can happen in Tennessee depending on how rocky your ground is. But if you can do it in the right way and there's a lot of distance between you and any groundwater, your ground can absorb it and you can plant plants. So those were the options before me. And as we looked at my particular land, we decided mulch pit, and there is actually a place I can put some of it directly into the environment and it will just feed wild plants. So that's the direction we're going. So now what's happening is we need to find the pipe, which I have a good idea where that is, dig down, and then put a Y in. Well, we don't want a 90-degree Y. You know why? Because a 90-degree turn on a drain does what? It collects sediment. And if you do put a 90, you need to put a clean out because you're going to have backups right there, right? So, we're looking more like a 45-degree angle while it keeps going downhill. And then with that, we can go two directions, one to a mulch pit and one to this other spot so that we're not overwhelming the direct on land spot. And we chose that based on the landscape of my land. How, like if you're in a high density suburban neighborhood or city neighborhood, you're too close to people for the land to be able to absorb your impact on the environment, right? If you're on 3 to 5 acres, you have a lot more room to do that in a way that's environmentally responsible. The other thing you can do is think about what you're putting down your drains from a chemical standpoint, of course. But anyway, so that's what we're doing now. And so day one, which was yesterday, okay, so I'm at the workshop, and on Friday, I think Friday was like the big day for us. Friday, we needed to run laundry and couldn't because it was barter blanket night. And I am running my laundry directly onto the ground right now to keep from putting as much water down the gray water system until we could fix it. Then I hear the next message, your gray water system has completely stopped draining. What do we do? So we started doing dishes in my outdoor sink, which goes into a French drain. And 2 minutes before that, one of the attendees, Ken, said, "Hey, I got a backhoe that I could drop out here. We're not using it for a while if you need to use it for something." He had no idea that I just, like 2 minutes after we talked, was going to hear that the drain needed to be dug up. Basically, it was time to initiate. So we came up with this plan. It was time to initiate the outside plan. Originally, I was going to fix the drains inside, which goes sideways and then uphill and then out. And then the next step was going to be to divert the gray water system off the cabin. But the universe likes to tell me what order to do things in with plumbing problems here. So the universe said, no, you're not. You're going to dig in your yard right now. And That was on a Friday. On Monday, on his way through, he dropped a backhoe off. So then we're looking at the backhoe. We're looking at my cabin. We're looking at the wiring. We know there is an underground wire. So day one, here's what we did. We hand dug down to the pipes to see if the wire was there. We found what looked like a wire. We took an electric tester to test it, and it did not give us back that it was live. So then we took a metal detector because we didn't have a locate tool, and we started looking for where the wire was. And as it turns out, the one we found is the right one. It's what sends 100 amps down to my cabin. But because of the insulation, it was not, we were testing it probably with the wrong tool. It was not turning back that it was a live wire. We also found, interestingly enough, a communications wire under there. So when they saw that, they were like, oh no, there are two electric wires. Why are there two electric wires? And again, this is why it's important to know the history of your house. I walked by and said, there used to be an intercom system between the cabin and the house. And I bet he buried it in this same ditch when he buried everything else. And then they looked at the wire and they're like, yep, that makes sense. That's what that is. So that wire is hooked up to nothing. So we hand dug that all out, and there was like that little fear that there might still be a wire. So yesterday, Nighthawk and Tactical and Mama Sauce carefully used the backhoe, like 6 inches by 6 inches, with somebody watching to see if it looked like they might be coming across conduit or a buried wire. And they dug the ditch all the way to the driveway because we're going to go under the driveway and out on one side. And they got it done. And originally, when this project had started, Nighthawk said, do you want me to get it all done in one day? And I said, that's not required. Like, that depends. What I want is that we start the project and we finish the project, and we don't wait weeks in between putting days in on the project. But I know my house, and I know my area, and I know that one-day projects take 2 days here, at least. So they got the ditch all the way to the driveway, and they had to reroute 1 or 2 times. Like, he came in halfway through the day and said, I have bad news. I don't know what we're going to do. And I was like, what? He's like, there's rocks in the way. I said, well, you can reroute it around the rocks because they're like the kind of rock that's too big. And he's like, yeah, I just didn't know if you wanted your lawn ripped up that much. I mean, do I care? I already knew the lawn was getting ripped up. This is the perfect time of year to do this because we're not getting inundated with rain. So I'm not just sending topsoil down the river. I can reseed it and run a sprinkler out there so that it's nice and firm by the time the rainy season starts. I was like, go nuts, dude. It just needs to be able to go downhill, and I don't feel like running dynamite in my front yard. So they got that done. And then he said, I think I need to do the rest with a shovel because it's kind of a steep hill. And with a backhoe, you need it to be stable enough that you don't roll it. So don't worry, Kim, we're not going to roll your backhoe. So day 2 is today. And we thought we'd be buying, the PVC pipe and putting it all in by the day. Nope. More digging has happened. Hand digging has happened. The cutting of the black top needs to happen. And this is the big scary part, guys. We may get to the black top and cut it and find out there's a giant boulder under there. And if that happens, there's going to be even more back to the drawing board on this whole project. We may go through a lot of my blacktop as part of this. But at the end of the day, I'm committed to getting the project done. So that's where we're at today. I'm hoping we get the pipe in, and then we're going to actually build in heat tape on the outlet of the pipe, just in case we have another one of those winters where it's negative, 0 and -0 at night for a week and never above freezing. That's the only way that the moving water doesn't end up getting out of the house anyway. I've had it happen once at another house in their gray water system. And when Nighthawk said, I really want to wrap that in heat tape, I was like, yep, right on, buddy. I'm right there with you on the heat tape, because then I can drip my faucets and not worry about the water backing up in an icicle up my drain, which has happened to a friend of mine. You don't want that to happen when it's really cold outside and you're trying to keep your water systems running. So that's where we're at. And I was hoping we'd get the project done in 2 days. Nighthawk has to leave for another job he has tomorrow and won't be back. We're not sure when he's going to be back. He'll be back by the end of the weekend, but we may not be able to re-engage until Monday on this. But I am super excited, and here's why. While I will be putting up the picture of you days since plumbing problems as 0 on my fridge, this kind of solution is a long-term solution, and once it's fixed, it's fixed. And for 14 years, or maybe 10 of my 14 years for sure, there's been a lot of patch because, there's the budget, there's the scale of the problem, there's the thing you do to fix it. There's a French drain right outside my window right now. I fixed it twice. The first time we did a patch, it got worse. And then we did the long time fix, and it was like a $10,000 project, right? So this won't be $10,000 because we're doing it ourselves. But it's a long-term fix, and it starts moving the property into a system that feeds itself, because then we're looking at what plants do we plant near where that outlet is to help absorb some of that water, and what high water using plants would I like to have on the property. That's the place for them, right? That becomes the willow grove. And maybe I can get some cattails going. That'd be kind of cool. So I don't know what I'm going to put there, but we're going to put something there, and that just starts changing the landscape little bit by little bit rather than doing everything at one time. So that, my friends, is the gray water overhaul system. And as I was writing this, I thought, okay, well, I'm sharing my gray water system ideas. How many of you are working on gray water or thinking of going out to the land, haven't bought your land yet? Have you thought about gray water? Because my solution here for Tennessee is a climatically and geology specific solution. There are parameters of how the ground is. There are parameters of how much rain we get versus other places. And my feeling on gray water and black water is that it's very, very dependent on what kind of environment you're in. So where are you? And have you thought through how you would handle your gray water when you move out on the land or on your property now? And if so, share your ideas, because I went over 4 ways to handle it. I don't think that's the only 4 ways to do it. And I'm really curious about what other people are doing. So share that on social or in the comments of the blog. With that, if you like the show and want to support the work we do here at Living Free in Tennessee, you can do it in a few ways. One, come to the spring workshop next year. It's awesome. And the best part about it is it helps move everyone at the event forward, not just, Living Free in Tennessee podcast. Also, you can buy your coffee at hollerroast.com or become a member over at livingfreeintennessee.com. I have moved the June webinar to June 27th because I realized I'm super exhausted, and while I could do a webinar this coming Saturday, there's no way. So there is a noon call with the GSD group on the 27th of June. I'm going to do that first, and then we're going to do 2 p.m. Saturday for the introduction to canning webinar that members get. And that's all. You can find that all over at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. I had no idea how tired I'd be after this one, and I'm less tired this year than I was last year, guys, on YouTube. But man, I slept till 8 o'clock this morning, every morning, pretty much since the workshop. But I've been going to bed at it's 8:30. I can go to bed, right? And what I need, Hat, is a hike and fun with Mama Sauce. Yeah, that we're going to be spreading all of our gear out in the living room. And we're going to figure out what we're really bringing and what I have and don't have, because I haven't been on a backpack in 20 years. So I'm kind of addressing this issue is addressing a fear I have of being alone. I'm afraid of being alone, and that's stupid. I should be totally comfortable being alone with myself. And part of that is spending time alone, right? And I mean, I won't be alone with Mom. So my first step, just like with the bees, having somebody help me with the bees to get over the bee fear, getting over sort of my fear of having time with myself without a distraction going on, like a podcast or whatever, a book to read, is to just take the walk and see, gear wise, am I set up for it? How uncomfortable am I on my sleeping bag and pad and all of that stuff. And it's also, I'm going to turn off my phone the whole time and just go out there and not have the distraction. And I'm really looking forward to spending some quality time with my mom, but also starting to address my fear of being alone. And that's all starting tomorrow. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I'm hoping this gray water system, I'm hoping we get good news when we cut that driveway. So, fingers crossed for me, everybody. I really don't want there to be a big boulder in my way, because at that point, I'm going to have to decide, really, are we going to get some dynamite and do some blasting here? Or what's our plan? Because a jackhammer ain't going to do it, right? I don't know. Can you rent? I don't know what I'll start asking online if there's a boulder in the way. You'll see it over on social. Anyway, thanks for joining the YouTube live stream. Blah, 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 live stream. We'll be doing these more often. So yeah, I'm back to normal. Not well, almost. Talk to you later.